Thank you so much for joining us for day 2 of our 2020 Mama Summit. For those who are new to Mothering Justice was started in an effort to empower mothers to influence policy on behalf of themselves and their families. It is important to us that mothers are included in the conversations that policymakers are having because their decisions impact us all. This year's summit focuses on making policy accessible to everyone by explaining the tricky language often used while also teaching you how to advocate for yourselves. If you participated in day 1, you know that we spent a lot of time talking about policy. Today, we'll be talking a lot more about self-advocacy. And to get us started, our keynote speaker for today is Dawn Demps. Dawn Demps is a Flint, Michigan native that has been involved with community advocacy and organizing since she was 12 years old. She utilizes her own lived experience to connect with students and parents to promote tools for self-advocacy, structural reforms, and strives to champion the concerns of these populations. Dawn holds an MA in Social Justice Studies from Marygrove College in Detroit, Michigan, and is currently a PhD candidate at Arizona State University in Education Policy and Evaluation. She is currently conducting a critical ethnographic oral history study of a grassroots community advocacy group comprised of Black, natural, and other mothers whom are galvanizing to challenge and dismantle the educational policies and practices that exclude Black children from educational spaces. Dawn is also the proud mother of 3 children, Journey, Deontay, and Zora, ages 17, 15, and 8, respectively. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn.
Hi, thank you, Danielle, so much for having me. Thank you I'm so happy to be here with this organization that's so close to my home. I consider Detroit like my second home. I lived there for like 3 years. And of course, I went to Marygrove College, so thank you very much. Thank you to the speakers yesterday. They were awesome. Kenria Jenkins, Trina Green Brown. I feel like I will be continuing a conversation that they kind of started yesterday when they were speaking. If you didn't have a chance to see their presentations, they did touch a little bit on what I will try to delve a little bit more deeply into today. So I'm going to get started. I do have a PowerPoint just super quickly. So part of my research that I do is I incorporate art. I'm an artist at heart. And so I have incorporated a lot of artwork from Black women artists in this slideshow that you are about to see. Minus save one artist, but I'll talk to you about that person later. So let me see if I can share here. And I'm assuming that everyone's okay. And I'm going to get started. So the name of my presentation is This Woman's Work, the Strength to Fight and the Humanity to Breathe. You can kind of tell by the title some of the things that we're going to get into today. So let's get into it. Not going to stay real long on this slide. She already talked a lot about what it is I do. I consider myself a Mother Bridge Interrupter scholar, and the order is important to me because my most important work is that of being a mother, and these are my 3 children on the slideshow. My son, Jayanti, who's an artist and a chef. My daughter, Journey, who is 17 and starting her first year of college this year in this COVID environment, and will possibly be a sociologist, kind of like her mama, or a lawyer. And my daughter Zora, who we have no idea, she loves to dance and just dance some more and sing. So that is my most important work, but I also consider myself to be a bridge. I think, especially as Black women, we understand the importance of that work of helping your community even after you've gotten to where it is you think you want to go. An interrupter. So when I'm in spaces and I see injustices happening, not just sitting on my hands or being silent, and this is not saying that you can change a whole system with your words, but always speaking up and being strong enough to know how it is you can advocate for people who often are not in the room and not in the spaces that you're in. And then last but definitely not least, I'm a scholar. The reason that's last is not because it's my least important work, but it's the work I do in service to the other things. So I did not come to school to get a PhD just for the point of getting a PhD. I came because I felt it would strengthen my advocacy work and further help my community. So we're moving off of that. I have created a little video clip off of something that I saw. There was something I wanted to have lead off this conversation. This is about 6 to 7 minutes, so I am going to ask you to be patient, but it will pretty much be the framework for the rest of the discussion.
To do what is right. And I believe the protests that we're seeing right now, although there were protests after every single incident, and I'd reached a point where I was asking, when will it ever end? I kept saying it over and over. I thought after both of them, it would have been the end, because I kept saying that I did not want to see another family suffer the fate that we did. And I'm so sorry to Tamika Palmer and to Wanda Cooper and to the other mothers who have lost sons from death. I'm so sorry to Tatiana Jefferson's family that she could have been in the comfort of her home playing videos with her nephew and be shot in her bedroom. I'm so sorry for Jamel Robertson's family and for E.J. Bradford's family. And now we have Rashad Brooks. I am so sorry for all of these families, because we all suffer the pain. Birthdays are no longer the same. Anniversaries are no longer the same. Every time I reached a point, at some point following Bofam's death, I didn't even want to see other people happy. I was so sad that if somebody, a random person at a mall or in the supermarket would laugh, I would feel like holding them and beating them up. I didn't want to see people laughing, because I lost a son who did not deserve to die in the way that he did. He was in the comfort of his living room. He chose to stay indoors that night to watch the first game. He was happy. He called his sister saying, oh, he couldn't wait for 10 o'clock so that he could watch the game. He had settled in for the night. And his life was taken by someone who swore to protect and to serve. Someone who ought to have had the right training to observe their surroundings and to de-escalate a situation. But instead, she hastily pulled the trigger and blew up my son's heart. If America does not shake up after all these incidents, the tears that we all share as mothers will be the tears that will break America.
Tamika, you hear that, and I'm sure it takes everything you've got. I want to hear what you're thinking as you're hearing Allison.
It's just hard, she talked about not wanting to see other people happy, to have these people around you, laughing and enjoying life. And they don't deserve to not be happy, but in that moment, you got so much anger inside of you, so much disbelief for what happened to your child. To know that she talked about, having the best day that day, going out to dinner with her boyfriend and going home to watch movies. To know she was in her house, in her own bed, and someone kicked in her door and killed her. To know that she didn't deserve it.
I can't even begin to imagine, but Michelle, you can. Michelle, tell me what you're thinking.
I think we all hope and pray
that when it's our child, you don't have to see it anymore. And every time you see another one, it takes you right back to the day that it happened to you. Miss Rice has come to my home, and happened to come on a day when my own sister lost her daughter. Miss Jean has called me on the phone, and I have called her on the phone. Miss Fulton showed up for a guest appearance in my city. It brings about a bond that I can't begin to explain. And I think the reason that that happens is because no one understands what this pain truly entails and all of the dynamics that come with it, unless you have walked in our shoes. And every day I pray that those shoes don't have to be put on by another person. So it's heartbreaking. It's not just heartbreaking, I know what that pain is. And I think all of us use the word overwhelming because there's no other way to define it. I don't think people realize that we're not just battling our own issues and the fact that we lost our kids. We're battling a whole law enforcement agency. It's a lot. A lot.
Okay, I just kind of want us to sit with that for about 30 seconds. I made the clip, and every time I see it, it brings tears to my eyes. And not just because I have children, but because I feel what it is that they're feeling and cannot imagine how it is that can go on. So this talk that I'm giving today could probably be 2 days long because it's so much as Black mothers that we're dealing with right now in the world on top of COVID, or let me say underneath COVID, right? Because these are things that we've been dealing with. COVID really is on the top. This is not new stuff for us. So in that video, you saw a presentation of strength. In that video, you saw suffering. You saw a lot of suffering, a lot of pain still. In that video, you saw a little bit of acknowledgement about breath, but then you also see commitment, because every single last one of those mothers, there were 7 mothers, there could have been more. George Floyd's mother couldn't be there because she's dead, right? She died a couple years before he was murdered. But all of these women, they do community work still. They travel around the country advocating. And listen, many of their cases are over. Botham Jean's mother has already actually was successful if you call it success in her case, but she still goes around advocating against police violence in other communities. And it has nothing to do with her son anymore, right? But it's this idea of other mothering forwarded by folks like Stanley James and Patricia Hill Collins, that we have this network in our community that we know we're not just fighting for ourselves, but we're fighting for other children, other mothers, other families. The only piece of artwork that you will see from a male in all of these slides that I will show you today is from my son. And my son is an inspiring chef and an artist, and he drew this. The first slide with like the hand of God coming down, he did on his own. The other one, I told him what my talk was going to be about, and he did that for me. I think that art is important in expressing our feelings and the pain, and often when you listen to artists, artists are far ahead of us in their analysis of what is happening in the world and what is going on. What's at stake? So there's a lot happening in terms of when we talk about things. So I study the school to prison pipeline, but not just the school to prison pipeline or student exclusion. Generally, I study community responses to that. So how has the community responded to the policies and the procedures that happen inside of schools, inside of classrooms, inside of legislative offices that seek to keep our kids out of spaces, keep us out of educational spaces, right? So my son got in trouble this year at school, right? He had a vape pen at school, and it was his first offense ever being in the office at all. And the principal called me in and said, "Oh, he's so good. I've never had to see him down here. He's no problem. But yeah, this happened." And so they brought in the police officer and they said, "Oh, there's a class. Just sign up and have him do a class and he'll be fine." Well, then a month and a half later, I get a letter in the mail from the police department charging my son with 2 felonies, right? And the write-up, and I'm not going to go too far into what happened with him exactly right now. If you notice, that's his son. Of course, I blacked out his last name and other discerning details. My son is about 5'11". That is true. He is Black. He is a male. He is 15. But he is not 210 pounds. At the time of this incident, he was 150 pounds wet. So how does a police officer who is supposed to be trained at being able to identify people get a young man off by 60 pounds? See, this is the type of thing that happens in the moment, right? Even though they're trained to observe things and be able to describe potential victims or offenders. But when they see our kids, they see them very differently. Our kids aren't kids. He's a 210-pound man, right? These are the sorts of things that are at stake, because I realized then that they are already trying to put my son somewhere that he did not need to be. And as a mother, I had to respond to that. But what is happening in the world right now, what is happening even with what I study with the school to prison pipeline, again, like I said earlier, is nothing new. Right now, because of COVID, attention is being drawn to a lot of things. We talk about frontline workers. Frontline workers are those people that all of a sudden we have decided are so important that they cannot take off, that they could not, at the height of COVID, at the height of the transmission of the disease, could not stay home. We would not pay them to stay home. We had to make sure that they stayed in front of us, because we need those workers at McDonald's, and we need those nurses, and we need those teachers. They're frontline workers. You notice anything about a lot of these jobs that we have all of a sudden determined are so necessary? First of all, a lot of them are underpaid. Second of all, most of them are filled by women. While women only make up about 47% of the total workforce, they make up almost 67% of the frontline workers, right? So we are often bearing the brunt of that. Black women are also disproportionately bearing the brunt of that, where Black women make up about 8% of frontline workers. They're making up 12 to 13% of these numbers. The people who couldn't take off, the people who can't work from home, the people whose pay would not continue if they had to stay home because they had an underlying condition. Child separation. We see what happened under this administration, but child separation is nothing new in the history of this country. Inadequate schooling is actually a story that has been long told from the beginning. When schools first started, the idea of school for democracy, as forwarded by people like John Dewey, did not start off with the first schoolhouse at the beginning of this country. The first schools only had white men of means whose families could afford to send them off to the Princetons and the Harvards, right? Anti-Blackness, and we see that in the results of these police murders that we see way too often. And you put on top of that the precariousness of policy. Not only did Ruth Bader Ginsburg just die, and the Supreme Court is extremely important to how it is, not only that policy happens, but how it stays in place. But we've seen states one by one picking off voting rights, picking off access to adequate health care for women, right? So this has been a long battle, and it's an ebb and a flow. The only thing I would say that probably exacerbates things is our access to social media. So we see these things every day, and many people have said it, but just comes to my mind, Will Smith said, this is not the first time that these murders were happening, it's just the first time we're seeing them televised, and it is so true. My father, who was from the South, did not care for police. We were taught early on to be weary of them because of experiences he had been through and because of experiences his father had been through, right? This piece of work by Pat Ward Williams was inspired by a Time News article that she saw, I think, in 1937. And these are the questions that she asked that you can see. How can this photograph exist? Who took this picture, right? Who took the time and sat there while this thing was happening? And we experience this now a couple times a month with the murder of George Floyd, sitting there for that long amount of time. We saw that, right? But I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't look at it as bad news. This battle will never stop. Derek Bell, and again, not to get too academic-y, but if you don't know who he is, you should know who he is. I would suggest you look him up. He has very good books, Faces at the Bottom of the Well, just so many things. He says, Black people will never gain full equality in this country. Even those Herculean efforts we held as successful will produce no more temporary peaks of progress, short-lived victories that slide into irrelevance as racial patterns adapt in ways that maintain white dominance. This is a hard to accept fact that all of history verifies. Derek Bell spoke a lot about the Brown v. Board decision. He was a contemporary. He actually was one of the lawyers that helped to advise on the case. He was very familiar, and everything that he predicted has come to be. We know that our schools are no more equitable than they were when the Brown v. Board decision was made, right? When he talks about racial patterns adapting, what he is talking about is the ability for them to morph, right? Their chameleon-like quality to change as need be. And just a few examples, we were happy when Barack Obama was elected president. People were talking about we were post-racial. That was a peak. And now we're definitely deep in the valley, right? So these things are not stopping, is what Derek Bell says. Then Saidiya Hartman, again, another author, regardless of being an academic, is somebody you should be familiar with, says Black lives are still imperiled and devalued by a racial calculus and a political arithmetic that were entrenched centuries ago. This is the afterlife of slavery. Skewed life chances, limited access to health and education, premature death, incarceration, and impoverishment. I want us to look at that term afterlife of slavery. To have an afterlife insinuates that it is something that cannot truly die. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about the permanence of this struggle. And we have ancestors like Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Anna Julia Cooper, and others, again, that I will not go into because I'm looking at my timer and I see how much time I have left. But as Black women, we say we're strong, we can handle it, right? Because we are informed by our ancestors and we are strong. But I question the can we handle it part, because sometimes your body tells on you when other things won't. There is an idea called the Superwoman schema. And I know we've all heard that, you know, there was a whole song, I'm Not Your Superwoman, and all this other stuff. But we have authors like Zora Neale Hurston, who over 50 years ago, 1937, said the white man throw down the load and tell the nigger man to pick it up. And he pick it up because he have to. But he don't tote it. He handed to his women folks. The nigger woman is the mule of the world, so as far as I can see. She wrote that in Their Eyes Were Watching God. And 52 years later, Bell Hooks wrote, it is not that Black women have not been and are not strong. It is simply that this is only a part of our story, a dimension, just as the suffering is another dimension, one that has been most unnoticed and unattended to. When she talks about the dimensionality of Black women, I think that is a thing that we're not used to talking about because we treat our women as if there is only one side to them, as if there is only one part. And Korea Jenkins yesterday made note of this when she talked about her podcast, right? Her podcast is about sexual satisfaction and sex. And like people were like, oh, okay. And she said, why not? We are whole beings. Why do we have a problem looking at Black women as whole beings? There is an author who has done research, or a researcher who has done research. Cheryl Woods Giscombe in 2010 came up with these 5 attributes that contribute to the superwoman trope, right? The first one is obligation to manifest strength. Obligation. The second one is obligation to suppress emotion. The third one is resistance to being vulnerable or dependent. So we don't ask for help. We got it, right? The other one is determination to succeed in spite of limited resources. And the last one is obligation to help people. As someone would say, well, these things are all positive, Dawn. We want to be able to do that. And there are other researchers who have said, yes, but the superwoman trope is a double-sided sword. It's a double-edged sword. So these things like refusing to ask for help and saying that we got it. I got it. I can handle it. What does that do? There are very real material impacts. We have higher rates of heart disease that we're dying from. We die more often at disproportionate rates from cancers that we should not be dying from. Stress-related disease, we are dying suddenly. And nobody knows what happened. Higher rates of depression, higher rates of eating disorders, but nobody talks about that. One of the researchers, Tamara Buffont, and I hope I'm getting her name right, Lamatante, I probably messed it all up, but you'll see it a little bit later. She said there is a psychological backstage that as Black women, that we say, we're not going to deal with that right now. We're just going to do what it is we need to do. And we go on. So we do believe organizations such as Mothering Justice and others, we do believe we need to fight for safety and affordable housing and equal pay and body autonomy. But we have a harder ability to think that we are also deserving of recognition, of beauty, of care, of somebody to care for us, and of peace. Hallelujah. Because there's nothing like peace, right? Because we come from a tradition that has made Black women the mules of the world. Because there are people who have benefited, right? Black women used to be unrapeable. You couldn't do that. You understand? So who wins when we say that we're superwomen, we could take it all? The first gynecologist, again, that one of the speakers spoke about yesterday, did not give us anesthesia because we don't need it, because we're strong. So we need to fight back against this with support systems and networks. And these are things that we don't just need organizations like Mothering Justice, Parenting for Liberation, and others to recognize and to understand, but also we can do ourselves. This is the researcher Tamara Beaubeau-Lafontaine. In her book, Behind the Mask of the Strong Black Woman, one of her participants in her study said, we have so much to share, but we can't share it with each other. We share the same lives, the same struggles, the same depressions. If we started to acknowledge our pain as a society of people, as Black women, my God, that pain would extend way back to when Massa was raping the women, because that's where it all started. And I think it's so much easier for us just to say, you know, we okay, you're fine, don't even worry about it. Oh, that's just a small cut. Go ahead and put something on that. I think that we have come to our limit in many ways, and our bodies are telling the tale of that attitude. We do need to take a moment. We do need to take a breath. We do need to recognize pain. We do need to engage in things like therapy. We do need to support other sisters and support each other, and recognize when we need to say, you need to sit down and take a time out, especially when you're doing this organizing work, especially when you're doing this policy work, because it can be too much and it will break your body. But we understand that we're not out of the game forever, because we have a commitment to our people. We have a commitment to our uplift. So when we get done, we definitely go back in. But you can't win a war with maimed soldiers. So we have to do what we need to do to change this rhetoric and change this frame, to understand that women, Black women, are levelly human, that we're whole beings and we're not just one thing. And I think my time is up in terms of that. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, Dawn, so much. That the comments, somebody said you are definitely taking us to church this morning. I'm going to open the floor for questions. You can post your questions in the chat or in the Q&A section, and I will try to get those to Dawn. But I want to thank you again. There was so much good stuff.
So much I didn't even say. I was like looking at my notes like skip.
I enjoy the fact that you spend some time talking about or reminding us that we're whole people, and that we don't always have to be this strong embodiment of what's really what white supremacy has created, this ideal that like Black women are superhuman, and which kind of goes into some of the issues that we have when it comes to Black maternal health and childcare and even paid leave. Like, they don't think we need time off. They don't think that we need to, like, we should be able to take care of our kids and their kids, because that's the system that they created. Yeah, see if there's any. Let's see. Aisha says this was a very empowering presentation. Janelle says, thank you, Dawn, for those words. Deborah wants to know, how can Mothering Justice partner with other organizations to put more soldiers on the ground? Ooh, that's a question for that's a question for the Mothering Justice team, and that's not just me. So I think that that's a good question that we are going, one, that I'm going to put forward to anybody who is part of the Mothering Justice team who would like to speak up, but then also something for us to think about later as we continue to create new programs and develop them. I will say that I know that we are trying to go national, so that will be one way that we'll move beyond just being in Detroit. Okay, how can we create more healing spaces for moms in our communities? Dawn,
yeah. So I have a whole list of things. So of course, I used to run a nonprofit. So I think that nonprofits oftentimes will engage in making sure that people are volunteering for their stuff and doing the work, right? But then we don't check in, you know, when we run nonprofits to make sure that the people who are doing all this work are good, and, you know, providing them with spa days. Like, there's ways you can do that in-house. Providing them with time of healing, doing purple sister circles just so people can share, bringing in a therapist once a month that your people can go in and talk to. So it's those small things, but it's also individual things that we can do. If you know a sister, because we know financially, Black women, again, we're always at the bottom, but nobody wants to talk about that. So there's this visualization that it's easier for us to get work, right? We're more educated, blah, 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 all this other stuff. Then oftentimes we're not paid equally for the work that we do, and we're not moved up in our positions. So we may not have the means that we need to have to do a lot of things we need to do, but a lot of us do. For example, like, I send my sister stuff, like little stuff, perfume and stuff, and a note, I love you, you know. I'm like literally getting a package together now to send to her back home. These are little things that we can do. You see that sister, you see her, you know she's struggling, and doing those type of things unannounced, like, that does something, because you don't know when you might intervene in that person's life. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what's happening with them. You don't know if they're in depression. You don't know if they're thinking about suicide. You don't know what's going on. But we are raised to think, first of all, we don't even talk about therapy, because we still, I think it's getting better. I believe it's getting better. But we still act like that means that you're crazy and you're not strong, right? And it doesn't. So those are some of the little things that we can do. There's so many other things that we can do as well, though.
Tyra wants to know the title of the book about the 5 superwoman tropes.
Okay, so the 5 characteristics is an article. That was a research article. I can send it to you.
Okay.
And I can send it to everybody. Mm-hmm. And I could send you a reference list, including the books.
And I just want to take a moment to do a little shout out and say that Ebony, our executive director, has started to do some of those things for us. So she made sure that we all got a week off, a paid week off, when it was, because nonprofit work right now is really hard, especially with COVID, and it's an election year. And so she made sure the entire staff had a week off. And I thought that was beautiful. They're also moving towards helping us have therapists that we don't have to pay for or pay a copay for, if we want to be open to talking to. And so I just want to shout out Mother and Justice and say that they are trying to move towards that work, and we definitely need more nonprofits to do that, and to understand that, like, you can say I have a whole staff of Black women, but if you are not taking care of the mental health and the physical health of those Black women, then you are no better than the rest of these organizations.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
An anonymous person has asked, how can Black women and those who love us best shift culture towards seeing Black women as whole beings? Or, like, how do you do this yourself?
So I'm still in the self-revolution. Like, this is the highest form of self-advocacy. The speaker yesterday, Trina, quoted Audre Lorde that self-care is a political act. And the reason it's political is because, like I said, really is suicide when we don't take care of ourselves. And they're fine with that. The systems we're fighting against are fine that we're dying off. So we have to take care of ourselves. We have to maintain our machinery, but it is a process. And I would say, I saw somebody else, I saw a question pop up about what can we do today? It's about mindset. A lot of it is. And as a mother, I try hard to have times where I'm like, guess what? Y'all don't mess with mama for an hour, you know? And it started small. When I used to come home from work, I would say, don't say nothing to me for 15 minutes. I would tell them that, right? Give me my 15. And I go in my room and I breathe it out. You know, it started with that. But now they know when my door is closed to my office, not only can I be working in my office, but I have a couch in here. Like, this is my spot, you know, not only am I writing my dissertation, but I can also rest. So that's like a small thing you can do. But there are books, again, I can add them to the reference list that talks about different ways that we can empower and heal ourselves. I think as Black women, we have to change our own mindset to ourselves, towards ourselves, and towards other Black women, right? Because we can be so damaging when we say, girl, you got it. But sometimes, girl, you ain't got it, you know, and maybe changing that rhetoric to say, how can I help you? Sis, what do you need? Do you need me to bring you a plate tonight? You know, we can order DoorDash. We don't even got to go over there. You know what I'm saying? Those little things. And just have to commit to that. So when our daughters come up and they see mom took time for herself, mom took a spa day, mom went got a hotel room by herself once a month or whatever, that they will come up with a different frame of mind than we have been brought up with, that we're just the mules of the world.
Absolutely. And even for those of us who are raising boys, I think it's very important for boys to see that Black women are being loved and cared for, that we are not always the ones just taking care of everybody, that sometimes we step back and take care of mama and make sure that they're modeling that, so that they, when they partner in the world, whoever they decide to partner with, that they realize that they need to take care of their partner, that it should never be one person doing that work in a family or a relationship.
Yes, that intimacy piece is a whole nother talk, but I so absolutely agree, because when the researchers talk about people who benefit from this superwoman trope, is not just white supremacy, it's Black patriarchy that also benefits from this.
100%.
This belief that, well, of course she wants to cook every day when she gets off of work, right? I knew one brother who, I'm not even gonna go into all of it, but who somehow insinuated that real women know how to take, you know, being called a bitch every now and know how to take a push and a shove every now and then, because that's what his mama had done. And she was a real one, and she stuck around and she took care of everybody. I'm just saying, you know, so we got to get beyond that.
Yes, and that totally reminds me of when after I had my first son, I had told my husband that I was going to cook dinner on this stuff, and he said he was talking to his coworkers about it, who are all women because he's a teacher, and they were like, she just had a baby, and he was like, but she says she wants to cook, and they were like, don't do that, like don't go home expecting dinner. And he said he came home and I was just standing in front of the stove crying because I thought that I had to be all these things. And he replayed the conversation. He said he walked me to, I can't even really remember everything, but I remember him saying, I just walked you to the bedroom and let you lay down, and I took the baby. And I was just like, that was kind of started this awakening in me that I'm always doing these things and thinking that I just thought that's how I was supposed to be, because that's how I would see my mama. She had 9 babies and she would be up in there cooking, or one of us would be cooking. I didn't see my daddy cooking. So that's what how I thought it should be. Ebony said we have time for one more question. She says, how do we mentally deal with the assertion that we won't reach true equality? Come here, baby.
Again, a whole nother talk. So Derek Bell, people called him a pessimist for saying that when he said that back in the 1970s. And I personally don't look at it as a negative thing. Again, not to get too academic, but if you read anything about Afro-pessimism, you can see the books behind me, Octavia Butler. She would not be defined as an Afro-pessimist, but an Afrofuturist. But Afrofuturism and Afro-pessimism actually play with each other a lot, because even in her books, there is a Black future, but it is still a Black future of struggle, right? There is no utopia. And so Derek Bell, I would think, would say and has said that you cannot go forward with knowing what you need to do, thinking that somehow it's going to end tomorrow. If I have to store food for the foreseeable future, but I think that I'll be able to go grocery shopping tomorrow, then I'm only going to store food for one day. Meanwhile, the drought's going to last for 2 years, so I'm not prepared. So to me, I look at it as a way to help us get prepared. And in Afro-pessimism, Frank Wilderson would say that we need to have joy in the flames, that in a way, this stuff needs to burn down. Again, not to get too, theoretical, but when the stuff burns down, I think that we need to find some joy in that, because we know we can rebuild something new. So to me, it's not a pessimistic point of view. It's just knowing that we need to be prepared for this fight that is long, and there will be no vacation, but we take breaths. And that's why I call them breaths intentionally, because somebody else asked me that before. I don't think there is a retiring. There is no retiring of this struggle, but we have to be mindful to make sure we take our breaths and take care of ourselves while we're fighting this struggle.
Awesome. So I want to thank Dawn so much again for being here with us today for this beautiful talk. Just the motivation we need to step into the next segments of the day. Sorry, I just got a little distracted. So today we're gonna have 2 different breakout sessions. The first breakout session starts at 11 o'clock. You can go to the, let me put the link in the chat. Nope, that's not the right link because that's me linking them to something else. All right, so we can put the link in the chat. And there's a little one in here hiding. He doesn't usually hide from the camera, but I think he realizes it's not just mommy's normal coworkers on the screen, so he's hiding. So you can go and choose a breakout session. These breakout sessions at 11 o'clock are all about self-advocacy around paid leave, childcare, and Black maternal health. For the MJ folks, if you are hosting one of those sessions, go ahead and exit out and get those sessions open so we can make sure that people know where to be. I will leave this room open in case people pop in and they're looking for where to go. But yeah, and then we will reconvene back here at 12 o'clock for a Mama's conversation on reproductive justice and policy in this upcoming election. And the speakers for that session are, or not a session because we're having a conversation. So the panelists for that are myself, Tanya, Jess Pollard, and Tamara Grice, who are Mama's U Fellows right now. All right, thank you. All right, we should get started. We'll be getting started shortly, waiting for everybody to come back from the breakout sessions. It looks like people are slowly coming back. Yep, here they are. All right, so I want to try to keep us as close to schedule as possible because we do have other breakout sessions scheduled for 1 o'clock and I don't want to make us late for them. So I'm going to go ahead and roll and, oh, I already did press play. Okay, so we're recording. We wouldn't be Mothering Justice, or it wouldn't be Mothering Justice in a Mothering Justice event if we didn't have a Mama's Conversation. And Mama's Conversations are central to the work that we do. A Mama's Conversation is just a group of women sitting, chatting, talking about everyday issues and things that you would just sit around and talk with your girlfriends about. So we're gonna have one of those Mama Conversations today about a very important topic, particularly right now, because it's an election season. And that Mama's Conversation is going to be about reproductive justice and policy and what that looks like for particularly Black women. I'm gonna let each panelist introduce themselves and they can tell us a little bit about why they wanted to participate in this particular conversation. And then we'll let Tanya, who will be our moderator or facilitator for this particular conversation, get us started. Let's just roll with Tamara. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tamara Grice. I'm a mother of 4 beautiful children. And why I wanted to participate in this conversation, because, you know, anything about early childhood has been just like paramount in my life. Reproductive justice is definitely something that is near and dear to me, and I have personal, you know, stories to share. And it's just really an important topic when we talk about like healthy communities, we need to start with like this. So thank you.
Hey everyone, I am Jess. I'm a mom to two girls, ages 7 and 5, and I wanted to participate in this particular conversation because reproductive rights, justice, access to care, and all of that stuff is extremely important to me. I am an aspiring doula, and these are the things that I think are very important to doula work, postpartum work, pregnancy work, and all of the above. So I'm anxious and excited to talk about these topics with everyone.
And then I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Tanya. I am the policy analyst for Mothering Justice and also currently a graduate student at the University of Michigan studying social work and public policy. So for me, kind of having these conversations is really important for me to kind of understand also like how can these conversations then transform into policy that actually works for Black mamas and Black women. So I'm excited to hear more about everyone's experiences. And so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. And the first question I wanted to ask is, what does reproductive justice look like to you all?
For me, reproductive justice looks like having the opportunity and the access to raise my boys in a safe and healthy environment. And it also looks like being able to make choices for my body and having access to the choices that I would like. So having access to affordable birth control, affordable medical care, having access to mental health care, because we all know that pregnancy can lead to postpartum depression and other illnesses. I'll pass it on to Tamara.
Everything you mentioned was definitely true for me as well. Reproductive justice means being treated equitable in all the sense of the word. I know that's a buzzword, but it definitely is true. I want to have the same rights when I'm in a birthing situation as other groups. Women of color are looked at, as we've discussed in the previous panel, they are looked at as you can just withstand everything. You know, we're not giving pain. We're not giving pain pills or pain medication as needed when sometimes in birthing situations. So just being treated just. And I mean, that's at the bare minimum. Treat me like you treat every other mama, you know. Let me have access to adequate health care. You know, COVID has brought out a lot of things with those disparities. Like I can get a totally different healthcare experience in Bloomfield Hills than I do in Detroit. And that shouldn't happen. So it definitely is something that is near and dear to me.
I think access and affordability are huge. You can have access to the best healthcare. You can have access to the right doctors, but can you afford it? Can your neighbor afford it? Can your Black friend afford it? And most of the time, the answer is no. There was a time a few years ago when my daughter was born, I had an IUD placed, and I had to pretty much jump through hoops to just get it approved through my husband's insurance plan. And when it was time to get it out, I couldn't afford it because my husband didn't have insurance. And, you know, he had just started a new job, and to get it taken out without having insurance would have cost me hundreds of dollars. So I had to wait months and months for open enrollment to come around for me to be able to get that IUD removed. So reproductive justice is access and affordability for me.
I mean, I think all those things are so important, right? Equitable treatment, affordability, access, the right to choose what you want to do with your body and have the ability to make those choices. So can you guys speak a little bit about maybe personal experiences you've had where the system has failed? So like where you talked a little bit about Jess about the access, right? Or the affordability. I'd also love to hear a little bit more about experiences relating to, inequitable treatment, and really kind of dig into like how that happened, why that happened, and like what the results for that were for you.
So for me personally, my birthing experiences, I wouldn't say that I received an equitable treatment, but I did something, Tamara mentioned how you go to a better neighborhood and you'll get better results. And so I gave birth in Atlanta, and I chose a hospital that was almost in Buckhead. So if you've heard of Atlanta, Buckhead is like this suburb that is really rich. I went to the doctor's office where others' doctors' wives would go to, which of course led to judgment when I walk in, because I'm a young Black woman walking in this office who obviously you would expect me to be in this doctor's office. But I also had the privilege of my sister-in-law was studying to be an OB, and she was a resident at Grady when I first gave my first child, when I gave birth. And I went in with this attitude and telling the doctor that, like, he would say, "Oh, do you understand what I'm saying to you?" And he was being really nice, but I was already like on guard about it. And I would tell him, if I don't understand something, I'll just call my sister-in-law. And he was like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" And so then it became known that this patient has a family member who is a physician, and my treatment changed. So a lot of women will talk about how they have these inductions, and they might not necessarily have the best experience. However, when I was induced, the first morning they started this induction and things started to go bad right away, which they tend to do. And my husband called his sister, and she came over after being on call all night in her scrubs, and wanted to talk to the doctor, who wasn't my normal doctor because he wasn't on call when they had to induce me. And she talked to the doctors, and somewhere they must have put in my chart that there was a doctor in our family, because the next morning it was a whole new doctor on call. And when she walked in to introduce herself before they got started again, she said, "Which one of you has the doctor as a sister?" And it was my husband. And we definitely noticed, like, they weren't going to play around. There was going to be I was induced for 2 days, which is something that is usually unheard of. Like, they gave me a choice. Would you like us to stop the Pitocin tonight or break your water? And I knew if they broke my water and I didn't have the baby in a certain amount of time, that they would do a C-section. So I was like, well, can you stop it and let me sleep? And we'll try again in the morning. And they did it, because the baby was doing well. I was doing well. But I have sisters who have been induced, and their inductions in Michigan were nothing like my experience. And I know that is because we advocated. My husband was advocating for me. My sister-in-law was advocating for me. We knew the language to use. And so, yeah, we look like young Black, they don't perceive us as professionals when they see us. My husband is 6'2" with locks, and like nobody perceives him as a teacher as soon as they see him. We're in sweatpants when we come in and check in. And I know that changed my care. And I wish that it didn't have to be that way. Like, I shouldn't have to prove that I am worthy of equal treatment, that I deserve to be treated as a human being when I'm giving birth. But I know that had a huge impact on it. Tamara, do you want to?
Yes, definitely. I'm like shaking, because even when I hear the word Pitocin, it does something like a trigger reaction for me. I definitely developed like a post-traumatic stress disorder due to birth trauma. I have 4 children. The first 3 were just like normal births. This last birth was extremely traumatic. I was pushed into thinking that, they first told me that my blood pressure was elevated and we need to induce you. I said, well, I don't have high blood pressure. I haven't had it the whole pregnancy. Well, we noticed, and they had me on a monitor. We've noticed this, and there's so many complications that can happen. So it was like a fear thing. They did the fear mongering thing. And so when you're in that state of mind, I wasn't really thinking. I also was in training to be a doula. So I knew what was going on. My logical brain was there, but it was not functioning. So I was I was thinking, like, what should I do for my baby? What should I do for my baby? I couldn't make a decision, and I just gave in. And I think that's like I think that's a tactic, because you should never feel pressured to do something, with your own body. I had called my teacher, like, what should I do? I just was all over the place. So they monitored me. I decided to get the Pitocin. I did not want any drugs as far as for pain. So I did Pitocin without any kind of pain regimen. So that was not a good call because regular contractions are natural. They give you a pause. They help, you can use breathing. It's not the same thing with Pitocin. Those are like constant. I could not recover. I was treated unfairly. The people were upset. Like the nurses would, like, roll their eyes when I was in pain. It was just like so just disgusting the way they treated me. I had a doula. If it wasn't for her, I don't even know what I would have done. But it was extremely traumatic, just by the way that they treated me. The doctor was not caring. It was not my regular doctor. It was just, I just felt like an alien. Like I wasn't even in the real world, because I had never been treated like that. And, I had no idea that, I would be in a situation like this, especially with all the knowledge I had. I asked for, I wanted to have a monitor where I wouldn't have to be confined to the bed, and all the things I try to do to prepare myself. Just all of that went out of the window just by the way they were, like the energy they were putting into my space. It was supposed to be calm. I was not calm. It just turned me off to hospitals altogether, because I don't really feel like they should treat, women like that. And I've noticed, like, talking to other moms, especially of color, they look at your insurance. You don't have the right insurance, you're going to get a certain type of treatment. You're not going to get the best. You're not going to get the best doctor. You're just going to get who's there. I mean, I just really feel like that it's like a socioeconomic as well as, some other factors. It shows what type of treatment you're going to get. And I just feel like, this is like the community. You're actually building a community. I'm birthing the community. I really should be treated with respect and honor, so that's my perspective.
I think for me, it's a little bit of both of what Danielle and Tamara said. With my first daughter, I don't think I got unfair treatment, but the treatment that I did receive with her was completely different than the treatment that I received with my youngest daughter. And I think that has everything to do with the status of my husband. When my oldest was born, my husband had just got out of the Army. He didn't have a job. I had Medicaid. I was a first-time mom. I didn't know a lot of the birthing rights and all of these things that I know now. And I was induced at 37 weeks when I shouldn't have been. And I had my water broken, and my doctor was a Black woman. I had my water broken. I felt rushed. And when I got pregnant with my youngest daughter, my husband was a cop by this time. We were living in Northern Virginia, very, very close to DC. So insurance was completely different. We had actual insurance provided by the DC Police Department. So it was just, the gap was just really, really big. So the treatment that I got when I had my youngest baby, I delivered at a natural birthing friendly hospital. They induced me at 41 weeks, but I was able to walk around the birthing floor. I wasn't rushed. They fed me, they let me drink, they let me eat. Like, just the birthing experiences were completely different. So I think it has a lot to do with your status. Just like Tamara said, your insurance will be indicative of how the birthing staff treat you as a Black woman, as a Black birthing person, while you're there, while you're birthing in their facility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think something I found really interesting that you all touched upon is the status and how that really changes the type of treatment you'll receive, which shouldn't be the case, as we all know. And it's especially, interesting when you're mixing in gender, right? And thinking about men and how, like, your husband's status or employment status is going to affect you as a woman and how you're being treated, which also has many different layers that would love to discuss at some point.
Last names, if you have the same last name, like, I got married while I was pregnant with my first son, and I rushed to change my last name because I knew, like, I had had enough friends who had given birth and talked about the separate experiences for me to know that I needed to make sure that our last names matched, all of that. Like, my friends were like, "We can't believe you got this paperwork done so fast." And I was like, I knew that I needed to get this done before we started having intent, like, just in case something went wrong and we had to go to the hospital early. As soon as I could, I was like, I have to legally change everything because I know how they're going to treat me. I know what's going to be thought of me. And it's just extra work. It's an emotional, oh no, we lost Tamara. It's an emotional thing. Oh, she's still here. Okay. Her video just went off, but yeah.
Yeah, emotional burden on top of what you're already doing. And, and thinking about, like, how that probably wouldn't matter as much if you are not a Black woman or woman of color. And so, yeah, and I'd kind of love to kind of think about, how do these personal issues that you've all experienced, how does that relate to these upcoming elections? Do you see a connection between the elections that are coming up and our politicians who are representing us or not representing us, and the issues that you're facing in your day-to-day lives?
For me, it's about the Supreme Court nomination. Like, it's like all I can think about is losing the access or the control of my body if the current nomination is pushed through. Just losing the access to that, or even the opportunity to have these discussions about what would be right for me, or for other people that I love, that, like, what if it's just not a good time in a mental space? Will I still have access to affordable birth control? Will we be able to say, hey, we want to get our tubes tied? Because in a lot of situations, you have to get, some people have said that they've had to get their husband's permission if they're married, like your husband has to sign off on an agreement. Some of my friends who are single, who know they don't want to ever have children, have, like, there's an age limit, or you have to have a certain number of children first. Just like, we already have all these hoops to jump through to control our own bodies now. And I'm worried what it will look like if we continue with this current president, and if we continue and if they push through this nomination for the Supreme Court, what is that going to look like?
Pretty much everything you just said. 1000% agree. Everything you said, everything.
Yeah, I totally agree. We already are having challenges And my thing is, the people that are making these decisions don't even have the ability to do the things that they're saying. So that is just really, really like you have no perspective at all to even make these decisions. Why would you even want to? Why would you even want to?
Or even like if we move past just the birthing experience and just the right to give birth and or to choose to give birth, if we look at the reproductive justice from the mindset of raising healthy and happy children, like what do the people who are currently running for office, like how are they going to protect my children who are already here when it comes to police violence, when it comes to the prison to pipeline, the school to prison pipeline? Like what are those people gonna represent for us? I'm very fearful of this current climate. Like my oldest is 8. He is officially at that age where white female teachers will see him as older, as scary, and I don't know if I trust. I know that I don't trust our current administration at all to protect his future. But I worry about whether or not there's anyone who is really going to protect him. I know that we only have one good choice at this moment, and I'm trying to lean towards, just it's easier to fix the system with people who will listen. And so I'm trying to focus on voting for people who I know are at least going to listen.
How are the rest of you focusing on that? Like, do you think, I think it's, not a lot of people are thrilled about the options that we have now, but as Danielle said, trying to focus on people who are at least willing to listen. And wondering, like, how are you thinking about that when it comes to terms of like state and local elections? Do you think that voting and participating in local politics will also kind of give you a voice within the system? And do you think it'll benefit you and your family? And if so, how? Maybe like speak to the importance of local.
I think it would only benefit if more people voted locally. I kind of feel like how many people feel like their vote does not matter. I feel like that at the local level, kind of, sort of too. Because it's like if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and everyone else is not, then yeah, my voice is not going to be heard because I'm the only one out there doing it. So I think that if more people voted, or if they knew who they were voting for, if they knew the policies that the local and state officials cared for, they would go and vote. But I just think that because of the climate that we're in, that not a lot of people are actively involved or actively researching their local officials. And that makes me feel like at that level that my vote does not matter. I will vote. I will vote, but it just makes me feel, in that aspect, it makes me feel like it doesn't.
I would say I don't think that I've ever felt that local and state elections don't matter until I moved to Georgia. I feel like that is when I started to feel disempowered. I was raised in Detroit. I was raised by, my grandmother used to volunteer as a poll worker. It was like a rite of passage to vote in local elections and to know who was representing you. But here I often, I can feel like Jess does at times, that if other people who don't believe or feel like I do don't vote because we have been told that Georgia is a red state and there's nothing that you can do to change it, it's conservative. If we continue to believe that instead of pushing others to go out and vote as well. And so I think my focus, especially this year, has been really trying to remind people that the only way we can change it is if we grab somebody else like us and let's all just go. And we show them like our voices do have power, and if they didn't, they wouldn't try to stop us from voting if they didn't think that we could really make an effective change. And so just trying to tell myself that so that I don't become apathetic, but also telling people in my community that as well.
So as a Detroiter, also I work with Hope Stars here, Detroit Champions of Hope. We are an advocacy kind of like group. So we've been doing a lot of I've been doing a lot of work as far as learning the politicians that we're voting for. Like, stop looking. A lot of times people are doing this because I've done it too. If the name sounds familiar, then I'm just gonna vote for you. That is not the way to vote. And you get tricked like that because, you know, there are families. I know y'all are laughing because it's true.
It's true.
And
especially in Detroit.
You know,
oh my God.
Especially when you know that families have like, okay, I'm gonna bring in my mom or my cousin or and so you're like, wait a minute, I know the last name, but is this the right first name? You don't know who the heck you're voting for. So this year, I am so informed about certain things like school board. That was never like a main priority in my head, but is a main priority now. Like, who are the people on our school board? Who are the folks that are the judges? Like, what is their policies? Who have they locked up? Like, I'm really doing the super research. Before, I used to just, like, my mother is very heavily into politics. She is a former Detroit Public Schools teacher for over 30 years. And so I said, as long as I got my mama, I'll be able to find an informed vote by asking her. But that's not the way to go. You have to know it for yourself. And so now I finally grew up and I'm actually doing the research. And you uncover so much things when you actually research who you're voting for. Because if we want to be the change that we want to see, we have to vote. We have to be informed about who we're voting for. We have to hold these people accountable for the things that they're saying. And when they mess up, you need to be very vocal. If it's by telephone, by letter writing campaigns, by groups, trust me, your voice matters. Your voice counts. You just got to use it. If you don't know that you have a voice, we keep on getting the doormat syndrome where people are just walking all over us. As the constituents, we're important. We are constituents. That means our voices count. And when it doesn't count, time to find somebody else to be in that seat.
100%. I completely agree. I used to work for a state senator's office, and we definitely got calls from constituents who said, you know what, I'm not happy with this. And when election comes around, I'm going to remember how this happened and how the office handled it. And, we do have a lot of power that they don't want us to know about, right? I mean, voter suppression is real and it is happening, right now. But I'd love to hear more about how you find the research. How do you do the research? How do you find out about the politicians and policies? Because I think that's a very daunting aspect, especially because, when I was younger, I used to vote by like, oh, I recognize this name. I 100% will admit to that. I don't do that anymore, I think, but yeah, could you talk a little bit more about that, please?
So there are some apps out here that can help you and assist you with knowing like for like what district that you are in, because with Detroit, it was very confusing when I found out the city council district representative, different districts were something, they were different numbers. And I'm like, wow, this is just, I never knew that. So just like even knowing like what to look for, there's like Ballotpedia is a website, Vote Spotter. So there's different apps out here that can show you like if you're voting for this person, how did they stand on these particular bills? What was their vote? I mean, if you actually sit up there and do the research, then you'll be better informed about what is this person's platform, and then you can make a decision. For me, I think that the presidential election is less important. I know people all want to go. It's those small elections. It's those, you know, those local elections that like directly affect your life and the life of your children. Those are the elections that are really important, and they're downplayed. The proposal and this different proposal, those things that like specifically directly impact your day-to-day life. The bigger picture is important, but by the time it gets down to you, you know what I mean? So, I mean, tomato with the presidential election, it's the same thing for me. I feel like it's, you know, however it goes, it's just what it is. But those local elections really like impact you so much quicker. That's just my opinion.
No, I mean, I think you're 100% right. I mean, I think that's where you can see why certain states are more, you know, liberal or progressive, and while others are more conservative. So I'm from California, right? And so we always talk about how, you know, California feels very different from the rest of the country because of our policies are very progressive and forward thinking. Obviously not all the time, and it has its own issues. But then you think about why, right? The local elections, and that's where it really matters. And, you know, to kind of bring it back to reproductive justice and thinking about local elections, local policies, and state policies, you know, what are policies or programs that you would like to see to address some of these issues that you've had in terms of access, affordability, equitable treatment, and how your status affects your treatment within the hospital system? And also, you know, thinking beyond policies and programs, like how would voting locally help to ensure that the policies and programs you want to see actually, you know, become manifested? That was probably a big question. So we can start with a smaller one. Like how I got very excited. We'll start simply, like, what policies and programs, you know, would you like to see? I think kind of bring it back to reproductive justice. And so we were talking about how, you know, access to the care, affordability of the care, equitable treatment, these are all areas that Black women and Black mamas have a lot of issues with within the healthcare system. So what gaps, or like how would you want to address these issues? Like if you could have a magic wand and change certain things, what would that be?
Oh, okay. My first thing would be to give less money to law enforcement and more money to programs, and create more programs that actually help the community. So programs for like community food. Like I don't know if anybody has noticed, but like schools have had to do like food drop-offs and things like that, or food stations, but everyone can't get to the location for those food places. So what if we had funding for, you know, actual food drop-off? So the, you know, instead of funding more police officers, we're funding actual people who come in, drop off food. Just like I can order my groceries, somebody can come drop that off for me. Someone can drop off the food to these kids whose parents are working or who are essential workers, and they need the food from school. Certainly more access to mental health care. I would love to see a program for postpartum or for moms, period, during pregnancy, where this is part of your care, is having someone to talk to. We talked about that before we met, is, you know, having somebody who you can talk to, and a follow-up. So I don't know if all hospitals have this policy, but after I gave birth to my second son, someone called me within like 3 days of me being at home or something, and they asked me how I was doing. They asked me if I had gotten my pain medication yet, if I was you know, if I had help, if anybody helped, or if I needed them to give me contact to resources. And this is also what I meant about giving birth at a hospital that is for rich women, pretty much, because it's in a richer neighborhood. So they have, you know, they have nurses who take the time out to do that. And I gave birth at the same hospital twice. I don't remember that phone call with the first pregnancy, but I probably didn't answer my phone, knowing me. So I can't say that they didn't do that the first time, but the second time it was really like important for me to have that because I was really struggling. And then also like policies that make doctors have to ask these questions about postpartum care. I did the survey, like we had a survey for postpartum care after my second son, and that's how I was diagnosed with postpartum depression, was based on my answers to those questions. And I probably was a lot more honest. I knew by the time I had my second son that the way I was feeling wasn't right. And so a lot of times we don't tell women how they're supposed to be feeling after pregnancy. It is not normal to, just be consistently tired or to be so sad. Like, those aren't normal feelings. And if you don't know that the first time around, so hospitals could, if legislators made these types of medical policies and put those policies in place, things like my friend who lives in Germany, they get like a monthly check for each child. And it's not like based on income or anything like that. It's like, we know you have an extra mouth to feed now. And so here is this, access to more money. And I think that's important. Like, you shouldn't have to be so impoverished for people to say we want to feed you. Like, if we, to me, that's the real pro-life, is taking care of the people once they're already here.
Danielle, I'm gonna have to ask you to get out of my head. Everything you said was so hit me hard, because I totally agree. I feel like if I had a magic wand, birth experiences would be a joy. I think there's a program that was in California that they were selected a small group of women. They were giving them $2,000 a month or something. I think that is so fantastic. They really should do that on a broader scale. I mean, that'd be a better use of money, because first of all, my last pregnancy, I didn't find out I was pregnant until I was almost 6 months pregnant. I know you're probably thinking how did that happen? I was still having a cycle and all of those things. I had no idea. My baby, my son, said, "Mama, there is a baby in your stomach." And I'm like, "No, it's not. Are you kidding me?" He said it 3 days. He used to talk to my stomach. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to get a pregnancy test." And I was pregnant. And so that would have really came in handy, because 6 months of living footloose and fancy free, and then in 2 months you got to prepare for a baby. That was
It just made my whole body heat up. I'm sorry. That is my nightmare, is to not be pregnant for that long.
To be honest, I'm going to tell you that actually the next person that has a breakout session actually named my child. Tamika named my baby. I was in a meeting, and I said, "Look, I just found out I was pregnant. I don't know anything about names. I'm just so unprepared. I didn't even care about a name at that point." She said, "You know what? You should name your baby Kalea." I said, "I am," and I did it. So I was in a state of panic. Who does that?
Oh my God!
She sure did name my baby. She sure did. So it would just be nice to have support.
My nightmare. I have had real nightmares about that, about not knowing I'm pregnant and just giving birth.
I did not think that was possible. I did not think that was possible, to not know you were pregnant. So that would be helpful for moms to have a package where they are given the emotional support, the mental health. People look at it as you only deal with mental health if you have a mental disorder. That is so backwards. You get an oil change, not because your car's breaking down, because you're trying to maintain it. You need to maintain your mental health.
Thank you.
You do. Because you don't even realize that you're in crisis until it's too late if you have not been doing self-care and all those things that we're now. This pandemic has just, I don't know, it's a blessing and a curse, but it has just identified the places that we need to really concern ourselves with. It's bringing some light to some things that were dark places. These at-will states where you can just fire you at the drop of a dime. Now that doesn't even make sense. Parents being at home with their children, have nowhere to send their kids, and they still have to work. How are you supposed to work and your kids are at home doing distant learning? Explain that to me. give me a sign on how that's supposed to work. So we just need to read these
We ain't allowed to sleep. Don't you know?
system breakage.
We're
I agree with
superheroes. We
system
don't
breaking.
sleep. That's what it is. They think we're superheroes and we don't
Yes.
sleep. Like they're like, well, or you can just quit your job.
Yes.
Where's the money gonna come from?
Perfect. You know, so I really just feel like we need to just examine some systems, and we need to like some systems just need to be chopped up and just broken, but we need to like come together and like put money into places that support families. How are you supposed to have a community or have a society if the people that are in the society are miserable and don't have the things that they need? I mean, I just don't understand how this is supposed to work. So hopefully we can do that. If I had a magic wand, I would be changing some systems, flat out.
All of them.
Oh yeah, agree. I mean, I think all of them need to be just dismantle, throw it away, start over. And it's just interesting, you know, you said like a lot of the fractures, they've been here, they've been present, we've been talking about it. It's just now that others are experiencing it, it's coming to the forefront, right? It's like, oh shit, all them look like
you mean white moms? You mean
those others are this color?
I'm saying.
All right. Well, I see that I guess like we're about to be out of time. So, Dan, but I also want Jess to answer the question too.
Oh yeah.
Leave her out, so
I'll try to keep it short.
We'll give you the last word.
I really think that the I guess obstetrician side of pregnancy needs a complete overhaul. I think that it is ridiculous that in the year 2020 there is literally only one midwifery school owned by a Black woman, and it was just created this year. I think that's ridiculous. That should not it's just crazy to me. I think that insurance companies should maybe cover midwifery costs. I think that insurance companies should maybe cover being able to have a doula. I think it's mind-blowing how they expect us to function and live, and then they're not giving us the proper tools to do so. I think it's ridiculous. So I would start there. I would definitely start at the even before pregnancy, because there are fertility doulas, postpartum doulas. Yes, there are fertility doulas that will help you.
I don't need help with that.
Me neither, girl.
Don't send any more of that over here.
Yeah, there are fertility doulas they don't diagnose, but they get you on the right tracks so that your body is ready and prepared to, you know, hold a baby. All of those things need a complete and total do-over, makeover, chop, cut and screwed, all of that stuff. It needs a complete rehaul. Yeah.
I agree. And I think just to finish it off is that all of this is very much related to local elections and state elections, right? You know what you need, you know what you want, and you have access to people who can help create those programs. And voting for people who are going to support you and listen to your voice is so crucial and critical. And so I really do want to advocate for that. And I'm glad that you all vote in these elections. So I will turn it over to Danielle now.
All right. Thank you to Tanya for facilitating that discussion and getting us thinking about the importance of our local and state elections. We know that this is also a presidential election year, but we have to remember that we got to turn out for midterms if we really want to make effective change. So let's all remember to get out and do that. Thank you to Tamara and Jess for giving up their Sunday afternoon and joining us for this conversation. We will hopefully be having lots more mama conversations in the future. I really have enjoyed this, and now y'all got my wheels turning about Mama's U and how we can do more of this in Mama's U. Look at Tamara. So yeah. we are getting ready to have our breakout sessions that start at 1 o'clock. So these sessions are the only sessions that are split, where we ask that the strategic communication for parents of color section, if you are a white parent, please do not attend that session. That session is only for parents of color. In that session, we're going to be talking about how, or our facilitator, Tamika, will be talking about how you can access the policies and talk to, I don't want to say, after Gabby's session yesterday about like how white supremacy and like makes us think that we got to behave a certain way, it's really been getting to me, but how to use that language. So how I talked about, I knew what language to use with the doctors because my sister-in-law had told me. But yeah, so that is what Tamika's session is about. And then we did not leave out the white parents. We also have a breakout session called Activating Your Karen, and that is going to be facilitated by Abby Norman. And that session will be all about how you use that Karen for good, how you can be the white parents in the PTA meeting who make sure that you're not just taking over, but that you're coming in there and you're helping the parents of color get what they need from the system when the system is ignoring us. So I hope y'all enjoy those sessions. You can find those sessions right on the Mama Summit event page. I'll drop that link in the chat again. This room will stay open if people have questions or if y'all want to chat in the chat together, y'all can do that. Sorry, I'm getting messages from people asking what to do. All right, so Aisha and Oriana, you head over and start those sessions off, and Sam and Alicia, you go ahead and do that as well. Thank y'all for being here. We will meet back here at 2 o'clock for another voter engagement activity. Please be here at 2 o'clock. Annie has set up a wonderful voter engagement for us, and I don't want to miss it, so come on over. Bye, y'all. Use it for footage. Anybody else planning on taking a nap after this? Or is it just me? No, I don't think my kids are gonna let me, but I'm gonna try. All right, I still don't see Sam back yet. They must be having a very chatty session. Come on, Sam.
Yeah, the Karen session was actually like, it was getting pretty intense.
In a good way or a bad way?
Oh, it was a really good conversation. I was into it. I just had to come over here to get like ready to do this, but it was actually like a really interesting conversation.
Yeah. Sometimes me and Abby facilitate sessions together. So like we'll do, when it's like a mixed crowd, we did one at her church a few years ago. Actually, we've done both of them at her church, but just different churches because she's a pastor now. So before she was still studying to be a pastor. They've been pretty good. I mean, I don't usually like to, I just don't like talking in front of people in general, but it's easier when I do it with someone else. So. All right, I'm gonna text Sam. All right, I'm gonna give her 2 more minutes, then I'm gonna give that session 2 more minutes, and then we're gonna get started. So if they're not back over here, they can just hop in. All right, they're on their way over. Okay. I see people trickling back in. Yay. All right. Thank y'all so much for coming back. We are down to the end of our program for today. And I'm gonna turn it over to Annie, and she's going to lead us through one more Get Out the Vote campaign.
Hey everyone, so I'm about to drop a couple of sample scripts in the chat. So the activity that we are going to be completing today is going to be, again, a Get Out the Vote activity. So you'll be reaching out to people that you know just to ask them to update their voter registration. So you're gonna mobilize your network to get out the vote. You're gonna let your circle know that there's still time to update their voter registration. And again, if anyone here has not yet updated their voter registration, you can do that at the link I've listed below. Or you can use the link that will be in the script as well. And so this is a relational organizing ask. So relational organizing is just using personal relationships to further organizing efforts. So warm contacts are like people you know. They're more likely to result in taking action than traditional organizing efforts. So if you just call someone up and you don't know them, there's a way lower chance that they're actually going to, like, you know, fill out a survey. I know if my cousin tells me, hey, I need you to fill out this survey real quick, I'm 10 times more likely to actually do it for them than I am if I get it from, like, you know, just a canvasser from an organization that I'm not that familiar with. So that's why we're doing this. So the first thing we need to do is create a list. So you're going to choose 5 people from your personal network to reach out to. So your circle is pretty big. If you think about it, you have your friends, family, church, work, school, you know a lot of people. So just, you know, pick 5 people that you think may not have updated their voter registration. You know, I usually try to reach out to people that I know are not super active voters. You know, I know there are certain people that are going to definitely always be on top of voting, and I like to reach out to people that I know may like slip through the cracks. So try to like sort of strategically pick your people, and you can obviously reach out to more than 5 people, just whoever you feel comfortable reaching out to. And then next you're gonna send your messages. So here are some sample scripts. I dropped them in the chat. So you could say, hi, I'm at the Mama Summit with Mothering Justice. Have you checked your voter registration? And then there's the link to check the registration. Or you could say, hey, I'm reaching out to ask you to take a minute to update your voter registration. Request your ballot to vote by mail by 10:30. Or this election is so important for Black women. Make sure you update your voter registration and request your ballot by 10:30. So you can use those, make your own, whatever you want. You know, these are gonna be like your contacts, so definitely you don't have to make it sound scripted. You can just, you know, if it's your auntie, you don't have to reach out and say like you're at the Mama Summit with Mothering Justice, you can just, you know, greet them like you would any other time that you're talking to them. You know, you don't have to like talk like a canvasser. You can just sort of make it your own and just, you know, ask, like, just let them know that like this election is important and they still have time to like make sure that they are ready to vote. And that is all I have. Any questions on how to do this? Are we good? It's a pretty simple thing. I will drop the scripts and the link in the chat one more time. Yeah, and that's all they really have to do. It's very quick to do it. It's like the one form, if anyone was on yesterday, it's like one form that they have to fill out. They just put in their information. And I think they can actually sign up to like have an absentee ballot request form sent to them as well. So you can get kind of everything going in the one link to register. Thanks, y'all.
All right, so hopefully everybody has been able to follow along with that. I don't see any questions or comments in the chat, so I'm not gonna keep y'all further, but definitely use that time or use the script and the link that Annie gave you and do your civic duty to get other people to do their civic duty. I want to take a quick moment to thank everyone for coming to this year's Mama Summit. I know that it looks different. We are virtual, but I'm excited because it means that I actually got to be there this year. Also, I want to thank the entire Mothering Justice staff for all their hard work. I know that I was bugging everybody with emails and trying to get everything done. I really appreciate y'all. Thank you so much. We will likely debrief next week on everything. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Hopefully your weather is better than ours, although it does look like the sun is out. It's coming out today, so maybe the rain is gonna stop down here. Yeah, thank y'all. Have a great rest of your weekend.